To start this project, I've selected some thicker white oak scraps. The nice part is that you can use any lumber you have to make this candy dispenser. Next, I've taken each of the boards I've selected and jointed them on two sides to make a perfect 90-degree angle. On this piece, I've jointed the widest face first, that way I can reference the freshly jointed face up against the fence. Once I'm satisfied with the two jointed faces, I can move over to the planer to get the boards to the correct thickness. Typically you go from jointing two sides to the table saw, but because these pieces are narrow, I decided to plane them down to the correct thickness first. I'm not trying to hit a specific thickness here, but I'm working with the material that I have and trying to make sure all the pieces are as thick as possible when I'm done. Once I have the boards to the correct thickness, I take them over to the table saw and cut them to the correct width. Next, I need to cut all the boards to length. I use my Incra miter gauge to get really accurate results on these cuts. Step 1 of this cut is to block the camera with your elbow. Step 2 is to square off one end before flipping the piece around. I set the flip stop on the miter gauge to make sure that I get accurate cuts each time. Once again, make sure you always square off one end of the workpiece. That way when you flip the workpiece around, you are always referencing a perfectly square edge. With all the pieces cut out, you can start to see the candy dispenser taking shape. Next, we move over to the router table. I select a V-groove bit to help find the center of the sliding portion of the candy dispenser. I use a combination square to help find the center of the sliding portion of the candy dispenser. You don't have to be perfect, but just get it as close as you can. Once you've approximated the center, you can split the difference of the two marks and continue that line around the end of the sliding portion of the candy dispenser. Lower the router bit till just the smallest portion of the point is sticking out. Line up the point of the router bit with the center mark you made on the board. Once you've lined it up, go ahead and lock your router fence in place. Using an offcut, run it through the router to verify that you've got the center marked correctly. You can see that that pointed bit made just the smallest mark. Using an accurate square, verify that the bit is in the middle of the board. Next, I have made a mark on the fence on where I want to start the cut and a stop block for stopping the cut. I'm using a 1-inch bullnose bit to make the dish on either side of the sliding portion of the candy dispenser. I plunge down as close as I can to the line that I've made on the fence. I wasn't able to hit it perfectly here, so I did carefully drag it back to the line, then push forward to the stop block. Before raising the bit, I flipped the workpiece around and do the same thing on the other side. I raise the bit and start rounding again. First one side, flip it around, then do the other. I know that plunging in beyond the line on the fence and then pulling back is considered a climb cut, but in this case, it's the safest way to do it because if you start right at the line, the bit has a greater chance of grabbing. Just hold on tight and go slow. Here you can see we've got a nice evenly spaced dish for the candy to be dispensed into. We now have two evenly spaced dishes on either side of the sliding portion of the candy dispenser. We now need to add handles so that we can push and pull the sliding portion to get our candy. To do this, we need to drill a hole just larger than the screw that attaches the handle. You can do this with a hand drill, but a drill press just speeds things up and makes things more accurate. Next, we use a Forstner bit to countersink the underside of the hole we just drilled. The Forstner bit should be slightly larger than the head of the screw used to attach the handle. Next, place the screw into the hole that we just drilled and attach the handle with a Phillips screwdriver. The next step is to glue and nail the side rail pieces to the base of the candy dispenser. Make sure to align the rails and base as best you can to avoid additional sanding or corrections later. With the rails and base assembled and drying, I grab an 1/8 inch round over bit. With my makeshift router table assembled, I round over all the sides of the sliding portion of the candy dispenser. The next step is to work your way through all the grits. I usually go 120 through 180. Once the flat faces are finished sanding, we have to move to this internal cove portion. This is a difficult part to sand because a lot of it is end grain and narrow. Please leave any tips or tricks in the comments below on how you would best sand this internal part. Once the base is done drying, go ahead and add the 1/4 inch roundover. Go ahead and sand the base, making sure that you even up all the seams and glue joints. Next, I like to go over all of the roundovers with 180 grit sandpaper just to even them out. The next step is to add the ring to the base. I use an awl as a punch to mark the holes and then drill out those holes on a piece of scrap wood. Once the holes have been drilled, I eyeball for center and transfer the hole locations to the base. I use these small stainless number 6 by 1/2 inch screws to attach the ring to the base. Go ahead and screw on the jar, and you should now be able to test and make sure that the sliding function works properly. Since this candy dispenser will come in contact with food, it is important to make sure you use a food-safe finish. I find that mineral oil is the easiest and best choice, mainly because of how easy it is to apply and then reapply. Once the oil has absorbed into the wood and you've wiped off any extra, it's now time for reassembly. Since this is Last Penny Woodworks, I complete all of my projects by adding in a penny. I use a Forstner bit to drill a shallow 3/4 inch hole. I then glue in a penny. I use a penny that is from the year that I completed the project. The last and most important step is to add your favorite candy and test several times to make sure that your new dispenser is working great. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy your new candy dispenser.